Hello again. I think this is installment 4. Back to that. As I reviewed the first 3 installments, some other thoughts came to mind. Thank you for bearing with me. These aren't polished. I think that giving them to you straight ahead like this probably lends more credibility to my offerings, I guess. I'm hoping. They are quite literally coming from the inside of my head to you, my heart, my head to you. When our family my brothers and I were young, we were raised rather unusually in a very tiny religious scenario, a church, a non-denominational church built around really conservative sectarian fundamentalism. Yes, I may appear to be an Italian girl from a nice Catholic upbringing, but I assure you, my looks are completely deceiving. I'm not particularly nice by nature, number one, and you're really looking at a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, steeped in the traditions of Judeo-Christian dogmatism. So there's a lot of judgment and a lot of, guilt. But there was also a lot of reflection. And meditation, which is a word and a term and a practice that has dominated the social self-help spectrum in recent years, meditation was at the fore of our worship service. As soon as I was able to sit in a chair independently of my mother, I was placed in that chair in this assembly hall of other people, about 25 of us, in silence. Silence. The room was quiet. No one spoke. There was no subdued organ creating an underscoring of moving mood. Nothing. Silence. And the worship service proceeded like that for many, many minutes at a time. Maybe a man in the room would stand up and offer a prayer, and that would be spontaneous prayer. Then maybe 10 more minutes would pass, and when you're 4 years old, 10 minutes is your world. A gentleman would call a hymn, and everyone would open their little hymn books and sing it without accompaniment. And then about 40 minutes in, we would have a communion. A communion service with the bread and the wine. Prayer, another song, and out we go. So the example of sitting and allowing your mind to either wander or become fixed on the object of your attention was ingrained in me. So as a very young child, sitting in those hard wooden chairs, plywood chairs, eating Cheerios out of a little baggie maybe, or pretzel sticks, I began to observe those around me. I mean, I didn't begin to, that's all I had. I observed what was going on around me. So I started to observe other people in silence and their body language. I think that developed into a tendency on my part to observe people in general. And the more you watch people, the more you see about yourself and about the way the mind informs the body. We must, as teachers, be keenly aware of our students and their behavior. By that, I mean their demeanor, their countenance, both collectively and individually, and the language their body posturing speaks. Traditionally, we learn to identify the troublemakers, and then we watch them But they're only troublemakers because we haven't captivated their attention and we haven't maintained it. In the years of what I consider the glory days of education for me, between 1990 and 95, I was at Lincoln Elementary, which ironically was the school of my own childhood. And during those years, never once, I tell you frankly, never once did I have one single solitary discipline issue in the classroom. Those were also the years during which I wore costumes and white-face mime makeup and created props every day. Every day. In fact, student teachers were coming in from Edinburgh University and observing those lessons, and I think they went back and shared them and perpetuated many of the things that I enjoyed doing with my students during those years between 1990 and 95. I saw one example of that come back and ask to do a videotape in my classroom, and I was astonished. I said, "Flippers and a snorkel. Were you in my classroom?" But anyways, enough self-aggrandizement here. Watch your children, but observe their body language for the kinds of signals that might suggest hunger or fear or trauma or trouble. Or apathy, or all of these preliminary signs that we might otherwise consider non-disruptive behavior. Kids who act out are far less likely to be the ones to burst forth in a moment of crisis and do harm to themselves or others. It's the quiet ones, the unresponsive children, that we need to care very much for and be mindful of and observe. You have a frame of reference in the front of your classroom that should enable you to see every child in it. If you cannot see every child in your room, then you must rearrange the seating so that you can. If the desks are bolted to the floor in the building where you are working, figure out a way to position the children so that you can see every face. I need to take a break. We'll be back soon. Time for some water. Thank you.